I'd like to thank my colleagues because I think that it's evident with 40 co-sponsors, that's not something you see regularly on legislation. 40 co-sponsors within 3 days of, within a co-sponsor request and introduction. So this is certainly a very passionate, compassionate, and appropriate issue for saving lives of the unborn, and we couldn't do it without Janet Porter and without the people that are dedicated to this 365. We have one other very important legislator in the room that we failed to mention, and I think he was hiding playing with the kids in the back. Who could blame him? But Representative Huffman is here, and I think that he has stood strong on the issue of life at every given opportunity. We just want to thank him and applaud him as well.
Thanks, Christina. For those of you who might have heard some of these remarks on my floor speech when we passed the heartbeat bill last time, you know, if you go into the hall, House of Representatives upstairs, there's 2 busts, and one most people recognize is Thomas Jefferson, and the other is, most people don't recognize, it's a historical figure named Clisthenes, which I think I'm pronouncing that right. And he is the father of democracy in ancient Greek. You know a lot about Pericles and some of the others, but he's the fellow who's known, and that's why his bust is up there. And, you know, in ancient Greece, which is really the beginning of our Western civilization, they created democracy, but it wasn't democracy for everybody. If you happened to be a male who was a landowner and a citizen, well, then you got to vote, but nobody else did. And that's really kind of been the pattern of the growth of our Western civilization. You know, when they signed the Magna Carta in 1254, the landowners and the barons, they all got something to say, but everybody else didn't. And then in 1776, we signed the Declaration of Independence. And, you know, there were a few versions of the Declaration before the original one, or the one that we know was signed. And one of those versions abolished slavery. And Thomas Jefferson drafted that way, even though he was a slaveholder. But they couldn't pass a unanimous declaration if they had it in there. So they compromised. Now, many today are saying that the way to get things done in this country and in this state is to compromise your views. Be practical. Be realistic. Well, what happened when founders of our country compromised on that issue resulted in the greatest catastrophe in the history of our country 80 years later in the Civil War. Over 500,000 people dead because they compromised on that issue instead of resolving it the right way and the fair way when they should have at the time. Now, even throughout the history of our country, it's taken a while for certain people to get full rights. Certainly we know that that's what the Civil War was mostly about. Women didn't even get the right to vote in this country until 1920. Same thing for Native Americans. And so many of these rights weren't even recognized. Well, we're seeing the same continuation of this struggle for all people in Western civilization to have full rights. And essentially that unborn child with a heartbeat doesn't have the rights that the rest of us have. And it's taken a while, just like it took a while for the folks in England and the folks in the early United States to figure out that everybody should have the same right to life, that those of us who have influence and power and who can vote and do all of the things are, the things that we hold so dear. So you have champions like Lynn Wachtmann and Representative Hagan here who are no different than what Thomas Jefferson was trying to do, what the folks were trying to do with the civil rights marches in the 1960s. Now, that's a lot of political ideology, which isn't very exciting, I guess, is it, fellas, when you think about it. What this is really about is people. And my mom and a couple of her friends started a group called Heartbeat of Lima in 1973, right after Roe versus Wade came out. And they have saved a lot of people. They've saved a lot. And it's interesting that the babies, the people who came to them, many of them for abortion, where do I go to get an abortion? They talked to them about that, and those women ended up having that baby. And some of those babies are, you know, in their 30s and have had children of their own now. That's really what this is about. I can wax as eloquently as I'm able to about the march of civil rights in Western civilization, but it's about all the people standing around and the people who are here today that wouldn't be, except for the work of the people in the pro-life movement. So this is, you know, economies go up and down, taxes go up and down, politicians come and go. But it's really about the people who live in this country. And that's why this is such a critical, important bill. And I thank Christina and Lynn for pushing this forward. Thank you very much.